If a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history. Carter G. Woodson. I first want to say thank you, Bernice King, for allowing us into your family, for opening up your heart and having the wisdom to call the elders together, to allow us to use your personal family and hurt to represent to a nation what true sacredness is. Thank you for allowing us to stand here with you today and stand on behalf of the Hosea Williams family. We are calling every individual that will hear this movement to write letters, send them to the King Center. Just put to whom it may concern, because to whom it may concern is your children. When they are at the museum and they see the Jewish Torah, do you think it would have been sold? And they are looking at it in the case and they say, Mama, where's all the righteous elements of the African American movement? The case is empty. When they go to the Japanese museum and they see the samurai sword and they say, Mama, where are all the sacred elements of the black movement? The case is empty. When they go to the Korean museum and they look for the elements of the most evil of rulers, and they see the Korean temples and majestic Buddha statues that have not been sold and that cannot, many of them indeed, be touched, they will say, Mama, where is our history? Where is our heritage? But the case is empty. I will say on behalf of myself as a minister that anyone who touches these sacred elements, watch your back if you decide to buy these sacred elements, because they come with a price. They've been paid for by the blood and sacrifices of millions of human beings across this country. The words I echo today are not my own words, but words of Elizabeth Umalami, daughter of civil rights leader Hosea Williams. Elizabeth gave this speech during a press conference with Dr. Bernice King and others during a very critical dispute within the King family. A dispute that affects all of us as African Americans and a significant portion of our history to the very nature of who we are as people. A dispute many of you are probably unaware of. Shy of less than a year ago, the King family found themselves in disagreement, torn between preservation and relegation. Preservation or relegation. Preservation or relegation. Preservation or relegation of Dr. Martin Luther King's Nobel Peace Prize in his personal Bible. Bernice, the only living daughter, stood on the side of preserving the family heirlooms, while her brothers Dexter and Martin Luther King III found themselves ready and somehow able to relegate the family heirlooms, the African American civil rights heirlooms. To preserve is to maintain something in its original or existing state, and to relegate is to consign or dismiss to an inferior rank or position. There are some things in this world that only those connected to it have the authority to oversee, the heart to protect, and the desire to preserve. Sometimes what may look beneficial to society can be detrimental to a specific people. The heirlooms I draw your attention to this afternoon is the Nobel Peace Prize given to him, Dr. King, 5 years after the I Have a Dream speech, and years of advocating a nonviolent campaign against racism, a campaign that eventually led to his assassination, a campaign responsible for my ability to stand where I stand today in society, a campaign very pivotal to the civil rights movement of African Americans, and the Bible, his personal Bible, where he sought direction from the Lord. The Bible which our 44th President of the United States of America was sworn in on. The first, and let me be sure to say not the last, African American president, the Honorable President Barack Obama. More than just a Nobel Peace Prize, more than just another Bible. See, these indeed are sacred elements, essential to understanding just who we are as a people and where we have come. The strong people we have become. People who overcome. They are a part of who I am and who you are. They are a part of a legacy that will continue with our children's children. See, this afternoon I'm unsure of what exactly led the two brothers to come to an agreement amongst themselves to even consider selling such precious heirlooms. And it would be immoral and unjust and un-Christ-like for me to even attempt to assign a reason. However, my thought regarding this issue this afternoon is simple. They simply must have forgotten. However, I stand before you to suggest someone must remember. Someone has to remember. And so as I conclude in my text, as I conclude in my thoughts to maybe provoke your mind this afternoon, I want to draw your attentions to Exodus chapter 1, verses 6 through 12, that reads, "Now Joseph and all his brothers and all his generation died. But the Israelites were fruitful and multiplied greatly and became exceedingly numerous, so that the land was filled with them. Then a new king who did not know about Joseph came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become much too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, will join our enemies and fight against us and leave this country. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh." Now this is the verse that I love. "But the more," somebody say more, "the more they oppressed, the more they multiplied. The more they oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread, so the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. The more they oppressed them, the more they multiplied. The more they oppressed them, the more they multiplied." If somebody would just remember, somebody has to remember. It is because of our oppression we have become the people we have become. We have accomplished the things we have accomplished, and we've gone the places we've gone, and we are going where we're going. I said the more they oppressed them, the more they multiplied. I want to draw your attention to the death of Joseph. See, Joseph had risen to power and had done a great deal for the people in Egypt. I want to draw your attention also to the perspective of the new Pharaoh. See, he saw something in this group of people. And whatever it was, he was fearful of their capabilities. I saw a post just a few days ago from Bishop T.D. Jakes that said, "The devil believes more in you than you do. That's why he attacks you daily." And then I want to specifically talk to you about the multiplication in the midst of oppression. The Bible says that the more they worked them, the more they produced. The stronger they became, and when they left, they did not leave empty-handed. Fight the oppression, but let us be wise in how we fight. And then the last thing I'm going to draw your attention to this afternoon is that most important thing. I want you to leave today thinking and understanding that the responsibility to remember was not up to the Egyptians, but it was up to the Israelites. People of God, elders of the African American community, politicians and leaders, it is not our school systems, nor our government's responsibility to preserve our history. See, Black History Month does not cover the entire year. In fact, Black History Month is a time to make known to the world the many accomplishments and contributions of the African American people to society. However, it is our everyday life responsibility to educate our communities on our history. The legacy didn't belong to the Egyptians. The legacy belonged to the Israelites. As I studied this text, as I look out into society, as I look within my own family, I'm convinced that people are dying And sadly, if we don't wake up, our legacy and history will die along with him. See, the authenticity and the true nature of Martin Luther King's ministry, statue, and character are slowly being simplified just to repeating his "I have a dream" speech. Society and many of us limit, or rather minimize, his work to simply recounting his "I have a dream" speech. Minimizing the movement to just Martin Luther King, but somebody has to remember that long before him, it began. And it has continued and will continue long after him. Somebody has to remember the pioneers before him and locate the pioneers of today and prepare for the pioneers of tomorrow. Those who dared to dream of a greater day, somebody has to remember. So, when I look into the eyes of young men, young women, elders and clergymen, politicians and even educators, I can't help but wonder, are we preserving our destiny? Are we preserving the destiny of the African American youth and African American community? As the patriarchs and the matriarchs of our families go on into glory, I'm faced with the question of who is the modern day Martin Luther King? Who is the modern day Rosa Parks? Who are the modern day leaders within our communities? Will there be another President Barack Obama? And not just who are these leaders, but where are they? Will somebody stand up in society? Somebody who won't destroy property that doesn't belong to us. Somebody who will not advocate for destroying our own neighborhoods only to seek out assistance in rebuilding. Because we need someone who is aware of the journey, aware of where we have come, of where we are going, and who understands that Black Lives Matters is more than a verbal repetition, a public march, but something that must be articulated through our lifestyles in and outside of the media, at home and in our neighborhoods, within our school systems and in our churches. There's a need today, a need for mentors, a need for trendsetters, fathers and mothers. We need our families back. Yes, a picture has been painted of us in society today. But the danger is not in the painted picture. The danger is in those who have accepted the painting as the final definer. I ask you again, are we preserving our identity and our destiny? Because despite what it looks like, we have a greater opportunity than ever in American society today. Carter G. Woodson began this pursuit, this recognition of Negro Week, because he understood in order to clearly see our future, we must be able to confidently stare our past in the face. Recite the old saying that said, if it had not been for the Lord on my side, where would we be? So I find myself at a loss for words as I pass some of the students I interact with on a daily basis, unaware of just who we are as a people, where we come from as a people. And now it makes great sense as to why they have no idea of where they're going. I am more confused today than ever. How is it even possible that we have come to this state of weakness, underestimating our intellectual abilities, living in a society where the emphasis is no longer put on education, no longer on family sustainability, but rather easy, quick, and dishonest means? We live in a society where we would much rather support television garbage like Empire and Scandal. And if you know me, you know I don't miss an episode of Scandal. But when will we return to glorifying intellectual gifts? It is so clear where we are destined to go in life when we simply take a look back into our past. The theme is know your past to identify with the present in order to change the future. See, in the midst of the oppression over the years, we have done nothing but multiply our intellectual abilities. We multiplied the amount of educated African Americans. We multiplied the amount of African Americans in government positions. In the midst of black men being gunned down, we are multiplying young men who are defying the odds. In the midst of the oppression, oh, if someone would remember, how have we forgotten so quickly? I'm forced to believe that perhaps the issue in our community today is that those reaping the benefits are not those who suffered for the cause. Perhaps the problem is we don't understand the cost for what we share in. All the cases of lynched men and women still to this day left unsolved. Those afforded an education are not those who are beaten, even killed for attempting to read. Perhaps you are choosing not to vote because you are not one of those attacked by dogs and sprayed with insurmountable amounts of water from a water hose. Perhaps the young men today who have the opportunity to be fathers are not those who were once taken from their families and forced to work on a white man's plantation in another county or state. Perhaps those who think the Martin Luther King annual breakfast is held too early is not one of those who's able to recall a time when the only safe hour to meet was before the break of day. Perhaps those who spit on our flag and disrespect the national anthem don't understand the color or don't understand what it was like to possess a love so deep for our country that despised you because of the color of your skin and serve your country only to return home and be treated worse than prisoners of war. Perhaps those who speak of the country and seek to destroy it have no remembrance of what it was like to serve with the Tuskegee Airmen, who were told their brains compared to that of apes, but yet known by many as the group of airmen to never lose an escort. Perhaps we don't understand the cost of freedom. Perhaps we just don't remember 52 years of change and a generation unaware of its history simply wants to erase it. Are we as equal as our white counterparts? I'd be a fool to stand before you and make such a declaration. However, I would be an even greater fool to stand before you, as so many do, and suggest that nothing has changed. It's only been 52 years. How come no one remembers? The responsibility is ours. It is our responsibility to sit our young men down and our young women down and explain what it means to be an African American man or woman, what it means to be an African American. Instill in them the importance, the value of the many opportunities we possess today because of yesterday's struggle. The problem is we have given our responsibility to people it does not belong to. We have a responsibility. See, it wasn't the Pharaoh's fault he didn't know who Joseph was. It was the Israelites' fault. The Israelites possessed an obligation just as you as I possess an obligation. And that's why I refuse to engage in conversation with anyone, yet alone a 20 or 30-year-old who suggests nothing has changed. When was the last time you were forced to enter through the back of a building? When was the last time you were forced to give your seat up because of the color of your skin? The last time you fought to enter a classroom and you were not wanted? When was the last time you stepped foot on a college campus and the president of the college stood in between the doorways and said, "Over my dead body"? See, our future success will only begin to skyrocket when we begin to become aware of our past and apply it to our present and seek our greater future. Martin Luther King said he had a dream that one day little black boys and little white girls and et cetera, would hold hands, well, daily on playgrounds across this nation. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Haitian, Jamaican, Christian, Jew, Muslim, atheist children hold hands, play hide and go seek together. Please don't allow ignorant individuals to taunt our history. Our success and our journey won't stop here. But an unawareness of progress is a step backwards. Preserve the dream. To preserve the dream is to continue to pursue the dream. Preserving the dream is not simply reciting the dream. Preserving the dream is preparing to move for more. Preparing to be more than what society says you are. Preserve the dream. In August of 2015, I walked through the doors of a 200-year-old Caucasian congregation, served as the first African American on the ministerial staff. In January, I accepted a position with Community in Christ Lutheran Church as the director of children and youth, another historically all-white congregation. Please don't tell me nothing has changed. Have we really forgotten that it was just December 6, 1865, slavery ended? 152 years ago, 5 years later, the 15th Amendment was passed and allowed all men the right to vote. And yes, we were confined by ridiculous hurdles that prevented us from voting, but the oppression just helped us multiply our demands, multiply our vision. And then in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. But you no longer desire to vote. I don't care how pointless it may appear to you. As an African American people, it is not a privilege, it is not a right, but rather an obligation to every Negro that was attacked by dogs, to every Negro that was beaten with batons, every Negro lynched, every Negro who was spat on. You don't have the right to throw that away. I'm convinced we have forgotten. I recall Colonel Benjamin O. Davis Jr., the first African-American general in the United States Air Force. Somebody has to remember. It was just 53 years ago that President Johnson passed the law prohibiting segregation. Somebody has to remember. Somebody must remember our first African-American mayor dating back to 1868, and Charlotte's first African-American mayor, Harvey Nack, who was elected mayor in 1983. Somebody has to remember. He is just one of the 144 first elected African-American mayors. And may I also note, all of this began just 3 years after the Voting Rights Act passed. Somebody has to remember. There are several who have followed. These are just the first. African American representation in the House of Congress dating back all the way to 1877. Somebody has to remember Hiram Revels, Mississippi Senator, Blanche Bruce, Mississippi Senator, Edward Brooke, Massachusetts Senator, Carol Braun, Illinois Senator, President Obama, Illinois Senator, you President of the United States of America, Roland Burris, Illinois Senator, Tim Scott, South Carolina to Senator. Somebody has to remember Colin Powell, Secretary of State. Somebody has to remember Dr. Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of the State. Somebody has to remember Eric Hampton Holder Jr., Attorney General of the United States. Somebody has to remember Roderick Page, first African American to serve as our nation's education chief. We are a people who went from not receiving education to holding the highest office to oversee education. Somebody has to remember. And Maria Louise Baldwin, in 1889, was the first African American principal in Massachusetts, supervising white staff in a predominantly white student body. Somebody has to remember. It's not the responsibility of our society, our government, to remember. I know some may disagree, but if you want it told right, the responsibility is ours. And the list goes on. Preserve our history. Stand today and prepare for our future, because despite the oppression, we have a beautiful history. And that, my brothers and sisters, encourages me. I get excited thinking about the future that's in store for us as an African American people. I get excited because we are able to accomplish all that we have in spite of the oppression, in spite of all that has been inflicted upon us. I can only begin to imagine the drive that has been developed due to the many unjust shootings. Will somebody please remember? Don't let the patriarch of your family, the matriarch of your family, leave this world without passing on to you our history. Will somebody remember?